Hello and welcome back to another edition of GNAT-TV's In-Depth series. I'm Andrew McKeever, the news director at GNAT-TV's News Project. It's a pleasure to have you with us today on Tuesday, December 17th. It's also a great pleasure and an honor to be joined today in the studio by Attorney General Charity Clark. She came down to talk with us a little bit about some of the major legal issues that the state may be confronting in the coming months and years, and fill us in on what's been going on. She was first elected to the Attorney General post in 2022 and re-elected this past year. So, Charity, great to have you back here again.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Always a pleasure to have you down and to talk about what's going on in the legal world in Vermont. And I guess I thought just to kind of get us started here, what do you see as some of the big issues that you anticipate your office confronting or dealing with as we enter 2025? Are there a couple of major questions kind of hanging out there that you anticipate your office will get involved with?
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump being elected to the White House certainly will have an impact on the work that we do. It did in 2017 when he took office the first time, so we're anticipating that's going to create work for us as well. We also had begun several lawsuits during my first term in office, so last year, the year before, this year or the year before, and lawsuits usually don't get resolved in a year, so we're going to be continuing that work as well. In addition, the Attorney General supports the legislature, and the legislature is coming back in January, and they have a lot of new members. Out of the 30 members who sit in the Senate, I think 10 of them are new, and there's also many new members in the House as well. So we'll be there supporting their work and being the subject matter expert on several topics. So that'll be taking up a lot of our time, and I think that's really going to take up a lot of the focus for me this winter and spring.
Well, I mean, there's a number of issues, or comments, statements, rhetoric that's come out of the soon-to-be Trump administration that I think might have some kind of impact on our state, and one of them would seem to be around the immigration area, I would think. For instance, Vermont, a lot of Vermont's dairy workers in the agricultural sector are immigrants. I assume many of them are documented and here legally and all that, but maybe some aren't. If there was to be a major push by the Trump administration to indeed carry out what he suggested he might try to do while on the campaign trail, that would put the state in a bit of an awkward position, wouldn't it?
Well, first and foremost, the people of America elected Donald Trump, but they didn't, however, vote for him to break the law and the Constitution. I swear an oath to uphold the United States Constitution. So as a preliminary, anytime that Donald Trump is going to break the law or violate the Constitution, I assume other state attorneys general are going to step up and hold him accountable, uphold the rule of law. When it comes to immigration, that of course is a federal issue. However, based on what Donald Trump said on the campaign trail, there appears to be an idea that other people than the immigration workers for the federal government are going to be assisting with his vision, but that can't happen. Our law enforcement here have a focus of public safety. That's what they're there to do. And we aren't going to have them be doing something else. We need them focus on public safety. That's their job, and that's what we want them to do here in Vermont. So that's kind of the dynamic that I'm kind of looking in my crystal ball and seeing might come up in January. I hope that we don't have a lot of focus on that, but based on what Donald Trump has said on the campaign trail, I assume that is going to be a big topic in January and February.
I mean, remember it was one back in 2017
Yes.
when he came in the first time, and we saw those executive orders about people shouldn't be here in sanctuary cities and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see indeed if he meant what he said.
Yeah.
Maybe not. We'll find out, I guess.
Yes, we will.
Well, I mean, I was thinking when you were here back last summer, I think in June, before the state primary, we talked about a few pieces of legislation that were in play in the legislature during the veto override session, and one of the bills that you were concerned with was one around restorative justice. That did survive the governor's veto. The legislature overrode it. I guess I just wondered, could you tell us a little bit or remind us a little bit about what this new statute involves and what it will do?
Sure. As a reminder, restorative justice has been a part of our criminal justice system for like 40 years, for a long time. And at this point, about 20% of misdemeanors go through a restorative justice program. This is a good thing. There's great outcomes for those programs. These are lower level crimes. Oftentimes, the person who's going through the program is presented with an opportunity for treatment or addressing mental health issues or even like job issues. There's just an opportunity to kind of get their life together. And so there's really good outcomes for those programs. So they're great programs. We have several different ones, but one of them is called pre-charge. And it's before charge is even made, a sort of similar philosophy is employed to address the offender and kind of get them back on track. Currently, that is housed in the Department of Corrections. My office oversees kind of as an umbrella agency all the other programs. And so for years, we've talked, everyone, DOC, about relocating pre-charge to our office so it can be with all the other work that we do. That was effectuated in the bill, but it's kind of a complicated money piece because I was like, oh yeah, we'll just, whoever's working at DOC, they'll just come over to us, but actually that person does this, that, and the other thing, and it's a little more complicated than that. So I think the reason why the governor vetoed the bill was based on the money, that there wasn't money attached to sort of stand up the program. And we responded in saying, we don't need money to stand up the program. The workers we have now can do that. But next year when the program is stood up, we are going to need a worker to oversee the program. And so the legislature will have to address that and find the money to make sure that someone is employed to administer the program, the pre-charge program. In addition, right now pre-charge is only available in certain areas, so there isn't that sense of like geographic justice, and depending on what county you're in, you might have access to that program or you might not have the benefit of the access. And so this law that was passed now makes it statewide. So that's a good thing to make sure every county has the opportunities. I know as a Bennington County girl myself, sometimes we feel forgotten down here. So stuff like that is always important to me, and I always have an eye out for it.
All right, there is a state south of Route 4, as the old line goes.
Yeah.
Well, another bill that you were interested in, the last time you were here was around data privacy. Whether or not folks who are, traveling around on the World Wide Web, have the privacy they should expect. Where does that stand right now?
Well, let me say, I for years have been an advocate for data privacy, and I think sometimes we kind of forget, what powers the internet, and it's privacy. I mean, a lot of the websites we visit, we don't pay for, and social media being a classic example. We don't pay for it in cash. We don't pay for it with our credit card. We pay for it with our data and our attention. Our data is used to sell advertisers to people who might want to sell things that we might want to buy, and that's how it works. So as a preliminary, we have to understand there's a ton of our data out there because that really is the ecosystem of the internet. When it comes to data privacy, we also have to remember that the Attorney General is the recipient of all the notifications for data breaches. So I know, because we get them constantly, we get, I think on the average, like 3 a day data breach notifications. And these aren't even mundane breaches. These are the breaches where there's actual like juicy information has been, obtained by some bad actor. So data privacy, data minimization, don't ask for data you don't really need, don't store it somewhere if you don't need it anymore, all that kind of, and we should all, in my opinion, be employing best practices when it comes to our own data. We shouldn't give data out, share data that we don't need to share, and delete it when we can, don't store it in vulnerable places. This bill would codify that, especially related to biometric data, sensitive data, things like your fingerprints, your DNA, your face, your eyeballs, all of that kind of really sensitive information, and provide rights to Vermonters to ensure that their data is protected and their rights are protected. Many other states have really led the charge on that, and we wouldn't be the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and so on. But we're now kind of lagging behind because the sort of next big thing in data is AI. And we need to lay that foundation for data privacy so that when we start having to make policy decisions related to artificial intelligence, we have that fundamental foundation. The bill from last time tried to mimic what other states had passed so that members of industry and business community don't have to reinvent what they're already doing. I think this is going to come up again. We'll be supporting it. I think the bill is going to be shorter, simpler. We were not able to get the bill ultimately passed because the governor vetoed it and the Senate could not override the veto, but I think we're going to make a better bill when we come back in January.
As I recall, there was a certain amount of pushback from the business community around this as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was initially, and small businesses were carved out, so it didn't apply to the smallest businesses. And then what was a real sort of sensitive area was what's called a private right of action in the Consumer Protection Act. Individuals can sue if they are harmed. You can't just sue willy-nilly, but if you have a loss, you bought something and it doesn't work and you don't get your money back, you can sue and say, I bought this, what a boiler, whatever the thing, a dryer, blender, you owe me the money. I can show my damages, what we say in the law. And I think that businesses were concerned about that, but of course, a lot of them were carved out, a lot of the small businesses were carved out, and moreover, someone would have to show those actual damages, that they actually had a loss. And I really do think if an individual suffers damage, they should be able to pursue an action. But the private right of action was actually only for the loss of biometric information and sensitive data. So it wasn't like the blender example that wouldn't work. It would be, you somehow gave up my fingerprint or my eye scan. Now, most businesses in Vermont, I'm guessing, don't have our fingerprints or our not yet, or our eye scans or our DNA. So it really didn't apply to a lot of businesses. And I liked that, and I hope that that's what the bill looks like in January too.
Now, I don't know if it's related to that or not, but you have also got some lawsuits going on against TikTok and Meta.
Yes.
Is there a connection there between that, or are those separate things altogether?
I mean, I think my office's expertise certainly creates that connection. Our concern about TikTok and Meta was maybe more sophisticated because we understand data so well, data privacy so well. We sued TikTok more recently, but Meta, and really for the same core reasons of creating an app that is addictive, that is on purpose, that is exposing children to unwanted advances by strangers and unwanted experiences, that is clearly related to the teenage mental health crisis. And I just literally last week I got a letter from a pediatrician saying they were concerned about the rise in mental health concerns and sexual exploitation of children that they were seeing in their practice here in Vermont. TikTok has something else too. TikTok has an online virtual currency. And I don't really know how it works exactly, so I might not be, for viewers who are on TikTok, they might say that's not quite how it works. But my understanding is that on TikTok, you're able to purchase a virtual currency. So I think it's like a coin or an egg or something, and you can pay someone with that egg or that coin. And the icon that's used is very clearly childlike. It looks like a stuffed animal. There's different choices, clearly geared towards children. And unfortunately, bad actors are using that system, which is not registered and operating illegally, to pay for children and exploit them. So it's very problematic. It has that additional level that we didn't have in the Meta case, so I wanted to flag that. But those cases are ongoing. They're really in the beginning stages. We've survived motions to dismiss in the Meta case, and we're pursuing, to defend those motions to get rid of the case. We were joined by many attorneys general in these cases. This was not a partisan issue at all. In fact, one of the main leaders is a Republican from Tennessee. So it's something that, and I'll tell you, when I was traveling around Vermont running for office, I love doing that because I'm getting the feedback from voters and from Vermonters, and I think this was probably the issue that came up the most frequently. People wanted to talk about this. I got a lot of thanks, a lot of anecdotal kind of concerns about their own children, or if they were a teacher, what they're seeing in school. Also, I received a lot of questions and ideas related to phones generally and not just social media, keeping phones out of school and that kind of thing. I think that's probably going to be another topic that will come up in January in the legislature, so one to kind of watch.
You think the legislature might actually come up with a bill that would, curtail the use of smartphones among kids in school?
Yes, I do.
Wow.
I mean, I think that there's definitely an appetite, especially with because phones are designed to be addictive. So if you're watching this and your child is, you feel like they're on their phone and they're sucked into their phone, especially in the middle of the night, odd hours, which certainly happens a lot, know that that's by design. The phone is designed to keep them on the apps and keep their focus there so that the dollars can be raised for the company who's running the app. But what the problem is at school, if they have access to their phone, it can be very irresistible because they're addicted to the app. They want to look at it. So it can be hard to resist. And I think the effort in the legislature is going to be, how do we create a system to keep the phones away from the kids so at school they can really learn and not be attached to whatever's going on in their phones. It really is kind of almost unimaginable for people older like us when you're just like, wow, I just remember being at Burton, like writing a note to my friend and folding it in a special way and trying not to get caught by the teacher, passing like the piece of paper. And things have definitely changed a lot in a short amount of time.
We've moved on, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I often think to myself, well, thank God I got through high school before all this stuff was invented.
I know. I had a disturbing moment. This was actually a few years ago. I taught a class at UVM and through the Consumer Assistance Program. And before class, some of the students were talking about this cool party that they went to over the weekend. And the reason why the party was so cool is because the host of the party had a bowl and everyone had to put their phones in this bowl when they joined the party. And so everyone just got to enjoy the party. No one was taking pictures. No one was texting their friends, finding out if there was a cooler party going on somewhere else. And I just thought, yeah, that was college for us, So it is kind of disturbing. But hopefully we're going to get on a better path, and it's good that policymakers are paying attention to this so that we can do better for our kids.
Yeah, absolutely, no question. Let me just shift gears a little bit here and ask a sort of more of a organizational kind of question, I guess. How does your office work with the various county, state's attorney offices? Do you sort of confer about who takes what case, or who's going to handle a certain thing, or is there certain categories of cases that your office would tend to do and leave others to the local state's attorneys, or is it just sort of a question of what's happening whenever?
That is a great question. I've experienced a lot of people don't actually understand how it works. And it's sort of layered. Literally layered. We have concurrent jurisdiction. What happens is the Attorney General has a statewide purview and really sets the agenda for how she wants to use her office. In my case, I have prioritized the most violent crimes and the most serious crimes. So that's murder, sexual assault, child abuse, and child sexual abuse material. So that's really been a focus of the cases that we bring. With the state's attorneys, they tend to take, they do also do the murders and sexual assault, but they also do a lot of the lower level crimes, the DUIs, retail theft, things like that. And that's very unusual that my office would do any of that kind of work. However, we are in regular communication with the state's attorneys who are independently elected to 4-year terms. We work really well together, both individually with individual state's attorneys, but also with the Association of State's Attorneys. So we work really closely, and we frequently, you will see us second chairing, like that's helping out with a case, because many of our state's attorneys' offices there's like 2 lawyers in the whole office. They're very, very small. We don't have that many lawyers either in our office, but we're always there supporting and trying to be helpful. We also will take a case if a case is like really complicated or going to take up a lot of time. We'll say we'll get this one. So we have really good relationships with the state's attorneys. I have a great deal of respect for them. I just did an expungement clinic with a state's attorney on Thursday, so we work really well together. But it is kind of confusing because we do have a layered system. The other thing I should say is the Attorney General, of course, does a lot of work and spends a lot of time on policy, the legislature, we sitting on boards and commissions and kind of, responding to legislative asks when it comes to summer study committees and that kind of thing. So some of the work that we do isn't going to court and prosecuting cases directly. It's doing this other kind of work. So we, in addition to the prosecution of cases, we do that other work as well. And the state's attorneys don't do that much.
What about drug trafficking and fentanyl and things like that? Would those be basically the province of the local state's attorney wherever the person was apprehended?
This is another, you've introduced a whole nother wing. This is great for educating folks. Yes, and the U.S. Attorney's Office will often take drug crimes and gun crimes. So we also work closely with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Now, the U.S. Attorney will likely change. They usually do when there's a new president in office. So we'll be looking to build relationships with whoever the next U.S. Attorney will be. And our offices do work well together. So we'll continue to kind of build those relationships as well. It's like an ecosystem in Vermont. And it's so Vermont that we all kind of know each other and we're very friendly with each other and create these professional relationships where we're supporting each other and trying to just deliver the best results for Vermont and make sure that the public safety is really a priority.
Yeah, because it's certainly been a big issue down here. And,
yes.
Unfortunately, one that I guess is going to go on for a while longer, although it was interesting to see last week, I think it was, that the level of opioid overdose deaths have finally begun to decline.
I know.
After several years of steady increases.
I know, that was really, really good to see. I was reading articles about that as well.
Well, hopefully that's a new trend or whatever. Can't come too soon. I just wanted to circle back again to kind of an area where we started our conversation today around, some of the issues that you might be tackling growing out of a new administration in Washington. One that I did want to just ask about, and that's around the whole environmental area.
Oh yeah.
Now we've had 4 years where clean energy, renewable energy was a kind of a big thing for the Biden administration. There were tax credits for electric vehicles and things like that available. And I just wonder if, indeed, as with the immigration question, there might be less emphasis on that, to kind of put it politely, and those tax credits for electric vehicles withdrawn. Is that an area that the state has a standing to kind of push back on in any way and say, wait a minute, we want to do it this way, or is it just a question of, well, we'll just have to, cope with whatever comes along?
Yes, I want to say first that I have always been so proud of Vermont's entrepreneurial spirit, and I've had with friends when I lived out of state, and they would be from wherever, and I would be like, well, what comes from Rhode Island, or what comes from, not to disparage Rhode Island, but what comes from where you're from, and then I would get going, and it was like, oh my gosh, Charity, just stop talking, because we have so many amazing companies and products that started here. There's such an entrepreneurial spirit that I'm so proud of. And I think when you create opportunities to do things differently in the energy space, you're also creating opportunities for clever entrepreneurs. And we have a lot of those in Vermont. So it makes me sad to think that programs or incentives would diminish under the new administration, because I think for Vermonters that's just like a missed opportunity for what kind of genius is waiting here in Vermont, that we've always had. When it comes to specific actions that Donald Trump takes, it's a shame, because I don't like to always have to think of it this way, but I really do. We're going to be taking a defensive posture rather than an offensive, problem-solving, progressive, innovative posture, and it's a shame. But what we found in 2017 when Donald Trump took office the first time is that he tried to do a lot of things that violated the laws or the Constitution. A law that was frequently violated in the environmental space was the Administrative Procedures Act. The Administrative Procedures Act is an act that allows, when you change the rules, there's a lot of transparency, a lot of opportunity for voices to be heard on how the change is going to impact people. And unfortunately, that was repeatedly violated to the point where of the over 60 lawsuits that my office sued during Trump 1, half of them related to the environment. I hope that we don't have to do that again, but I'm not feeling optimistic based on what I saw on the campaign trail.
Yeah, it certainly seemed like we were back to drill baby drill again or whatever, and that would be unfortunate, I think, given the progress that has been made, and at a very slow pace, I think, compared to what would be desirable to see. But to any kind of slowdown or rollback on that would be not great news for coming generations, number one.
Yep. And also the way that that money is spent. You know, it's always nice to see the federal government spending money in a way that like we benefit from or that reflects our values. And everyone in Vermont loves our environment. Like we have the most beautiful state, and we all, whether you're hunting, whether you're snowboarding, whether you're walking, you know, in the woods, it's such a magical place we all love. It's not a partisan issue. And so it always feels sad when the federal government is not reflecting that back to us.
I think we have time just for one last question before we have to run, but I wondered, you know, you mentioned a moment ago that we're going to have a bit of a different legislature coming in this year, a very different composition. There won't be Democratic supermajorities in the Senate and the House of Representatives. Do you think that's actually, do you think that's going to have a big impact on some of the legislation they're going to be able to get through? And will that force maybe the governor and governor's office and the legislature to work more closely together? Like they both have said they wanted to, but seem to struggle to do that from time to time. Or is it going to be kind of the same dynamic that we've seen in the past couple of years?
I think that's my hope, and I'm excited for the possibilities. I think a lot really depends on these new members, you know, really kind of getting up to speed. I've heard that some of them were not expecting to win, and now they're thinking, oh my gosh, like this happened, I'm going to do it. And, you know, just leaning in and saying like, okay, what's my job? How am I going to be effective? What do my constituents want? And I'm really excited for the possibilities. I think that we also have seen, you know, engagement from the governor's office, and I think it's going to be a really exciting time to, you know, maybe get some movement on bills that were sort of on the wish list, but weren't really going to rise to the top. And now there's clearly a focus on what we all heard when we were running for office, which is affordability. And I think that that's going to be a great thing. It's like, I love the 2-year term, and you know, don't ask me right before I'm, you know, running 2 jobs, but I really do love the 2-year term because it provides voters with an opportunity to say, this is what I want from you, and then those of us who are elected to deliver, and that is a good thing.
All right, well then we'll leave it there for today, but once again I want to thank you very much, Attorney General Clark, for making a long drive down from Montpelier to be with us in person as opposed to Zoom. I mean, we've all had our share of Zoom calls for one lifetime, I think, at this point. But again, great to have you down, and good luck up in Montpelier the rest of the way. And always a pleasure to have, let's see, Burn class of 1990, was it?
93.
93. All right, I was close. All right, yeah, to have one of the locals here with us who's making a difference up in Montpelier.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Always our pleasure. And thanks to all of you who've been with us today and for spending part of your day with us. Hope you found our conversation interesting. I sure did. And we'll see you again the next time. Take care.